In this tutorial, I'll show you camera mode, which is one of my favorite things about Rooms and something that I don't think a lot of people have discovered quite yet. So if you go to any room, it can be your room or someone else's, and you go to the new overflow menu in the top right and you click it, you'll see camera mode listed. When you click camera mode, as the name suggests, you'll now be in a mode where you can fly around as a flying camera. To move forward, hold W, backwards S, left A, and right D. If you hold Shift while pressing W, A, S, or D, you'll move around faster. And if you right-click and drag with your mouse, you can look around. On a trackpad, that should work with Control, click and drag, or whatever you set up in your settings. When I move my mouse, it'll show some additional camera settings. But before I get there, I want to show that we've listed out the instructions I just mentioned about how to fly the camera right up here. So if you forget, you can always look back here. All right, let's take a look at the settings. These will be familiar to anyone who's done manual photography before, but for those who haven't, I'll run through them quickly. Field of view affects how wide angle an image is. So if I go all the way to the right, I'll get this sort of like fisheye perspective. If I go all the way the other direction, I've now zoomed in a bunch. I'm going to have to move the camera backward, but now I get more of a cinematic shot, something I'd get from like a telephoto lens. Let's just put it in the middle for now. I'll talk about aperture. Aperture, in a nutshell, says how much of what's visible should be in focus. So if you go to the left, everything will be in focus, which sounds like what you'd want and probably is most of the time. Let's say I want to do a dramatic shot of this astronaut's face. If I turn up the aperture, then some things will start to get blurry. Now, when you use aperture, you also want to set the focal distance. And the easiest way to do this is by tapping this button and then tapping the thing that you want to focus on. So I want to focus on Bruno. Now he's in focus. And now if I move this all the way to the right, you'll notice the backdrop has become blurry. And actually, because I moved it all the way, I think his nose is in focus, but like his eyes aren't. So you probably don't want to move it all the way. It depends on the effect you're going for. That looks pretty good. Next, we have take a picture button. So if you tap this, it'll take a picture of whatever it's looking at now and download it to your downloads folder. And finally, my favorite is the dolly. So a dolly is a device in filming that like a camera on wheels and lets you take smooth shots. So if you click this, it opens up the dolly menu. And what you want to do here is set an in and out point. So a common shot that I do is I zoom out. I'm going to set, let's say I want to set this as the starting point. So I'll click set. And then let's say I want to zoom into his face like that. I'll click set. Now, if I click go to, it'll jump me between the start and end points. Then I can determine how much time should the dolly shot take and what should the curve look like. Let's look at what it looks like now, just to give you a sense of what this can do. So if I click go, or if I click spacebar, it'll start the animation from the start point to the end point. It'll also interpolate between any field of view or aperture or focal distance settings I make too. I usually like to move this up so that it's more of a slow shot. Obviously, the speed depends on the distance you're traveling. And then the curve determines whether it should speed up or slow down at the beginning or end of the zoom. Linear has no speed up or slow down, and I usually use that. This is what that looks like. So it's moving linearly so that the speed of the camera is the same in the first second as the fifth second as the last second. Ease out would slow down as it's arriving at the end point. Ease in would slowly accelerate faster, and the strong just exaggerates that. So I'll show you ease it in, out, strong, just to contrast the linear. So now very slowly getting off to a start. Here we go. Now it's going to get faster, and then as it gets close to his head, it's going to slow down again. Nice and slow. Now, if you want to make a movie, you'll want to take a screen cap of whatever you're seeing. And if you're using a Mac, you can do that with QuickTime. QuickTime's built into every Mac. So if you go to QuickTime, you go to File, New Screen Recording, Then you can specify the area of screen you want to record. Maybe it's just the inside of this window, and you can take your shots. And then after you have those shots, you can edit them in whatever tool you want. I lately have been using CapCut, the free desktop editor from the makers of TikTok, but you can use anything you want. So that's the basics of camera mode. It is truly a lot of fun. I'll show you a quick example shot that I was just playing with from a different room. This is a really neat looking room from a user called Alex DBD. And if I go to camera mode, which by the way, I can hit Shift-C as a shortcut, I set up a shot here that starts on this Sonic arcade game. And when I hit go, it'll zoom out and reveal the room. So you can do some pretty cool things and experiment, and it looks pretty neat. So play around with it. Let us know what you think. If you have questions, feedback, as always, we'd love to hear from you. Thanks.